So in other words, Google algorithms are a lot better now in keeping up with your search, right? Rather than bringing you back to the things you used to search in the beginning or a while ago when you mentioned marketing or definitions of marketing, things like that, which are not relevant to you anymore. But Google keeps improving as you use it, right? In other words, Google gets better if you use it more, which is quite clever, right? And in fact, this is where we're going with SEO nowadays, which is what we'd like to talk about today. There are lots of discussions about SEO, right? Some argue the SEO is dead. Search engine optimization is dead, right? Some argue and say, oh, it's still alive. So there's different scholars talking about different things, right? But when you start to look at what's happening now with search engines, starting with Google and Bing and Yahoo and the others, is actually the differences in the type and the way how information is organized, right? So it's not that search engine is dead, it's just that the approach that search engines are taking themselves is slightly different because they are changing their algorithms around 500 to 600 times every year to reflect on what's trending and to reflect on new technologies that are being offered in the web today. Which means that instead of just looking at the keywords alone, search engines now are looking at stories, at content, right? And if you do well with your online presence and online business in providing relevant content and long relevant articles of your industry, of your interest, then search engines will reward you, right? If you have just search engines, sort of like keywords integrated to your website, relevant to your industry, you might get first time visited to your website, and search engines might bring you, but that's just going to be once and that's it. But if you end up creating content, right, and stories that are relevant, that are being read and by users, which means that your interaction that you have with your customers are a lot higher than they used to be, Google algorithms are going to say, wait a second, that's interesting. People are not just going in to find some information and leaving from this website, but they're going in and they're interacting with the content, which means that the content is right, the design is right, okay? The multimedia, like images, videos, are well optimized for their website. And for that reason, we will keep sending these guys traffic again and again. And ultimately, that can mean business to you, right? So, in other words, things have shifted around to more content-driven, right? And also the content that is relevant to the things that our users searching online for. Because more and more nowadays we search using long sentences. How do I fix my, how do I fix my broken chair, right? Or how do I change oil in my car, right? We don't just search change oil, right? We might do, but in general the trends are that we're searching for more longer phrases rather than short ones. And Google is reflecting on it. And therefore, as a company online, if you're able to meet those needs that are being asked online, then you are on the winning side of the story. Because Google is going to reward you. And if you're getting Google to reward you, then you've got something, right? Because still, there's huge amount of traffic that comes to the website via search engines. And so, that's why you cannot say, and if you said the search engine is dead, you'd be wrong. For a very specific reason that the percentage of traffic coming to the sites is still very high from search engines, right? We could say that search engines are dead if there were very little or no traffic whatsoever. If you start to look at search engines, there's still, for instance, more than 20% of searches made online using Bing and Yahoo in the US still today. So that's quite a big percentage. Yeah, we know Google is a big player, right? But when you start to look at the end traffic that comes into the website, and you start to see that Google and other search engines are still big drivers, you cannot ignore search engine altogether, right? And so that's the argument that some of scholars are making today. We will look today at three things. Review of last week's lecture on customer journey a little bit, and how we got our website listed by Google, how we get to do that, and a bit of organic search engine optimization, linking into what we talked about earlier. Is there anything that you picked up on your search with Google? Was there something else that you picked up in Google that looks different to you? Now I know it's hard because you get used to it, using it every day. You can't pick up differences from what it used to be a while ago and the differences reflected nowadays. Was there anything else?
I say the top two, top three are always said advertised.
Yeah.
And then you get actually the ones that are not advertised.
Okay.
Or not so much.
Also,
Yeah. So Google is very clear to tell you these are the guys who pay for this,
yes.
right? Yeah.
depends on the topic. You get it updated, like from less 2 hours, 3 hours. So it's quite interesting.
Yeah, so you can start to see now that the search is content driven rather than just keyword driven. And until recently, there was so much work going on optimizing your website based on keywords. Now, Google algorithms are telling us that if you do that, we will give you some traffic, but we will not give you repeat traffic. If you are creating relevant content and good lengthy articles that our users are engaging with, right, we will give you repeat traffic. And when we give you repeat traffic, you might have repeat business, right? So that's the whole idea. And the reason why SEO matters is because it's a very good source of traffic. Now when you build an online business, what you're trying to pick up is which is the biggest source and largest source of traffic for you. And then search engine is still there, social media is picking up, mobile is there, tablet is there, right? So what you need to do, you need to optimize yourself to receive all that traffic. Because if you can pick up a bit of that traffic from each individual channel, then you might be in the winning side of business online, right? And we talked a little bit about this last week when we talked about customer journeys, right? We said customers come into our website from all over the place, which means that we need to go and fix those journeys in all those places if it doesn't work very well, right? Now, in this case, we're talking about search engine journeys. So the journeys that customers take from search engines and they get to us. So if customers are coming from search engines that into our website, we need to make sure that what they're searching for, right, and what we are providing with the content, it's relevant. Because if we continuously do that, Google spiders are very happy with us and they come to visit us a lot more. The whole idea is to try and get Google spiders and Google in general to fall in love with you, right? And if you get to that relationship with Google, then you really have got some business. Of course, that doesn't mean that you'll do really well because it depends how good you are in getting people through the browsing and checkout process on your website. But if you were very good in getting people through your website once they're in, then you can have some business, right? Okay, and as we talked about this earlier, we said that people get to you from all sorts of places, and we need to know that because we need to optimize ourselves for those channels. So, in this case, today we're talking about SEO, but when we talk about social media, we will then talk about how do we prepare ourselves as a business, how do we make sure that we can gain some of that attraction from social media channels. And what are the things that we need to do? Otherwise, if we ignore it, that means there'll be no traffic. If we ignore social altogether, in terms of building profiles online, engaging and providing relevant content, we will miss that huge opportunity of the traffic from social media. So it's the same case with SEO. So SEO, in fact, is actually reflecting on the content. And a huge amount of content comes from social. Right? And that's the main reason why Google played so hard to try and get Google Plus to work. It's not working, right? But they played really hard to try and gain success with Google Plus. Because they knew that if they can be the winning side of history with social network like Google Plus, they might get a lot more information, have their databases richer with information, so then they come up with better results and also do better with their advertising platform as well. Yeah? So, when people make inquiries into search engines, right, like Google, Google goes back and scans billions of data and finds the one that is relevant to you, right? And that's what algorithms behind Google do. So, the inquiry is made, it goes into the engine behind the scene, and the engine works out very, very quickly what's the best result for you. Now, this process here that we talked about earlier is changing, and it's changing around 500 to 600 times every year. And you might wonder why there's so many changes in Google algorithm, which is the engine is the heart of Google, is the DNA of Google. It is what Sergey Brin and Larry Page invented in the first place before they started Google, which then now doesn't just look at the keywords, doesn't just look at the links or exchange links you've got with other websites, but actually looks at the relevant content that you're providing to the requests that are being made online. So Google, until now, worked out the popularity of your website by looking at who you're linking with. In other words, if you are Hira.it, which is my personal blog, and is linked with relevant Guardian website, for instance, and BBC and so on, Google will automatically start to say, oh, by the way, Hira is relevant online because he is connected with these relevant sources. Okay? But now, what Google is saying, that's fine, but we want to check whether Hira is popular online because he's providing content that users are finding useful. So in other words, to succeed online with search engine, you've got to succeed not just with optimizing your website and using relevant keywords and then sit back and relax, but actually you've got to stand up and try to find ways to create relevant content for the users that you're trying to target online. Yeah? And all of these are happening here. But in addition to that, throughout customer journey last week, we talked about the importance of having relevant design and relevant accessibility and usability of your website for the target audience you're attracting. Which is something that Google would, using their algorithms, would very much highly take on board, right? In other words, Google will say, if your design really reflects on users' intentions, that automatically means that users will spend more time in your site instead of leaving. It is what Google calls bounce rate. The amount of people that come into your website but then leave straight away, and there's so many reasons for it. Sometimes they leave because they have been guided through a wrong customer journey and then land into the website they're not interested in. They might not find the information they need, or what you provide is irrelevant to them. Right? So there's many reasons. But bounce rate is quite important for Google. And when you start to look at Google Analytics behind the scene, you start to learn these metrics, which are quite important. And again, when you drive people to the website, obviously we need to know where we're getting them to. So for Google, it's absolutely crucial to get people to the right sources of information. That's why just doing the keywords and link building and things like that is not enough, because we need to learn about stories. So Google is saying now we need to provide, we need to scan the web and not just look at the links and relevant things, but look at the stories and the content. Because keywords are not just about text. Keywords represent things, they represent images, they represent stories, right? So that's why we need to try and link as many of those keywords to as many of those stories as we can. And as a search engine, if we're able to do that, we might be able to give search results, which you have noticed now, that are a lot more visual than just text. Right? So if one of my, let's say, YouTube videos was very successful, very popular online, when people search for university or my name, instead of just presenting a text-based thing, Google will actually present one of my YouTube videos. Right? And if you now start to search for university in Google, Google is not going to present just university website pages, right? But it's going to represent some of the content that the university has published on social media that became quite popular. And if Google is doing that by not ignoring what's happening outside keywords, but actually by embracing what's happening outside keywords, and most importantly, making sure that the understanding of keywords is not just the text. There is a lot more to it. There are images, personals, also very specific things around stories that reflect on those keywords, right? And that's why these are some of the key arguments that are being made by scholars online, that SEO is still there, but things are changing a lot more. Once you then have a business, because this is Google's business, an algorithm is Google's business, it's like, the Coke recipe, right? And so, I don't know how much Coke recipe is changing, but but this is clearly changing quite a lot, 500 to 600 times every year. And so, once you have a business that is not just looking at the keywords, is not just looking at the link building, right, and who you're linking with, but it's also looking at the content that is being published online before they give you the results, then that becomes a lot more relevant than it used to be. So in other words, these guys kept up to speed with what's happening instead of ignoring it altogether. And when Google started indexing social media, that's when lots and lots of companies who had doubts about social media changed their game. Because they said, oh, by the way, if Google is recognizing this powerhouse of information, we can't ignore it. So in fact, you actually have large companies who until that time ignored social altogether, But when Google came up and they said, by the way, we will be indexing everything that goes against your name, against your personal brand or business brand online, then the story changed altogether, right? Now, when it comes to style on social, search engine optimization, there are two different styles and structure. Well, you've got to remember that the structure is very much around HTML, which stands for Hypertext Markup Language. And again, the whole web pages nowadays, the core and the structure is built up on HTML, right? But then on top of it, there are other layers introduced, right? There's JavaScript layers, there's PHP, databases and so on, MySQL and so on. But the structure of any website in general is an HTML website, which is then approved by the World Wide Web Consortium, W3C. And you can do that quite quickly yourself. You can just pick up a link of your favorite website, go to W3C, and then just add the link and then check and validate if the link is built up on HTML standards. And you might wonder, well, why this matters. Well, it matters because if your website is validated in W3C, that automatically means that Google is going to index that as well, because it has passed the test of being a well-structured website. In other words, Google rewards websites that are well-built. Google rewards websites that are well-structured. Google rewards websites that are well-designed. Because a good designed website with a good customer journey on board means that users are going to spend a lot more time in the website and use that information to get their job done. And Google wants to be relevant. And the only way to be relevant is by ensuring that the content that's being presented to those users that are searching online is relevant and helps them to get the job done. How annoying was your experience when you wanted to search for something online, but you just couldn't find it, right? And then you had to go to ask your friends, your families, whatever it is, because you were just in a difficult situation because you needed that information very much. Google doesn't want their users to be in that stage ever again. So that's why Google is trying everything to bring in and to index as much as they can in the web. So then what you see now in Google is very different from what you seen last year. Google is more visual. Google is more driven by content and stories and trends rather than anything else, right? And when you see now, even Google's page nowadays is very visual, right? It starts to show you videos straight away within Google search, even though those videos might be, they don't have to be YouTube videos, they can be videos from anywhere in the web, but just shows you that it's bringing that visual power of visuals into the search engines, right? Because if one image means 1,000 words, how about one video? Right? And again, if you were able to offer that to the users requesting information online, and if you're Google, then you're doing something right. The CSS is the style. And we know, this is not computer science, so we won't be getting into details, but the CSS is that front layer that makes sure that the website looks nice, looks easy to use, but the back end is that strong structure that is supported by HTML. And it's just something useful and important for you to remember. As you know, without a doubt, search engines there are a lot more search engines than just Google, right? But definitely Google is number one. And you've got online searches, Bing and Google. Bing is still quite relevant in some places. Portals like Yahoo and directories. And you've got more like smarter and cleverer sort of search engines like Wolfram Alpha, which very much gives you huge amounts of opportunities to not just search for things, but actually search for countries, populations, formulas, math formulas, algorithms and things like that. And it will automatically organize information based on your request and then give you the results live straight away. Which is what Google is trying to do. Because if you go to Google now and just say, can you add 5 plus 10, okay, how much does that do? And they'll tell you straight away. You can also say to Google, how much is 10 quid in dollars? And it's going to give you a live answer straight away. In addition to that, now when you go to Google and you start typing in keywords, Google starts recommending you things. It starts to guess what you're going to look for. So again, making that search experience a lot better. But in addition to that, now Google is trying to learn so much. So then, when you are in Google search, it's going to offer you things that are relevant to you at that specific moment in time. And we had the case about marketing earlier, right? So, based on all your, in other words, Google grows with you, right? And as you get more educated, more skilled in your area, Google will follow you with that, okay? And it's very unlikely for me to have, for instance, let's say recommendations for simple basic SEO articles when I search for SEO online, because Google knows that I'm not a beginner with SEO based on what I've done so far. Or whether it's e-commerce or social media, things like that, right? Now, what kind of search results do you get? We talked a little bit about this, but they're clearly sponsored links, which you see on the top, and then you've got Google Ads on your right-hand side of your search results, and the natural listing, like the organic one, is straight in the middle. Still the most powerful thing. In fact, some users, when we did some research, they suggested that nobody clicks on the ads. And actually everyone clicks on these. And we said, are you sure? They said, yes, we are. And then we went straight ahead and looked at the Google earnings, right? And showed them billions. And they said, really? Well, that's where they make most of the money. In fact, by selling ads. But again, people start to forget that sometimes you might actually click on the ad, but you don't recognize it was an ad. You just click because you want to get to the information you want to get to. You can't be bothered that that click cost £1 or £2 to a company, right? You don't think about that. But again, still this is the most powerful thing. Now, in comparison to what Facebook is doing, right, which is saying something like this. They're saying, until last year, if you weren't quite good with the content, you could reach out to anyone and actually do well enough without spending a penny on your advertisement. And Facebook is now saying, no. You will have always limitations to how much you can reach out and how successful you can be with your natural listings, with your natural growth, if you don't pay for advertising. So there's always going to be a limit to how much you can succeed online if you don't pay. In other words, Facebook changed its own algorithms to give more to those who pay. Right? Which was quite controversial last year because people said, no, that doesn't work. How can you reduce the success of those content writers and those companies that publish relevant things that they're doing? And then, well, you don't see it, but behind the scene, they will limit how much the success of Facebook with your content is going through unless you pay for it. You'll still reach out to people, but it's not going to bring as much traffic as it normally did if you end up not paying for it. Which is something that Google doesn't do. Google will always, remind you to do paid advertising. They will always do that. In fact, if you're subscribed as a business, they'll keep recommending you every other week, right? But according to their algorithms, this is still a powerful thing. You can still drive loads and loads of traffic to your website by doing well with your natural listing, with your organic growth. Which means that you are doing it through content development, through link building and keyword analysis as well, without paying. But if you did all of those plus paid advertising, then you could do quite well with Google. And again, some research suggests that more than 72% of people are more likely to choose from natural listings because they want to see, especially those that understand Google a bit more, would like to see and click on those links that come from organic growth rather than those paid links. In fact, the benefit with Google paid links is as well the fact that you cannot just go to Google and say, I'm BMW, I'll give you hundreds of millions of pounds, just put me on the top spot. You can't do that, right? And the way how Google works out, where does your ad go, is by looking at how well so far, what was your history of your paid advertising. And based on your history of paid advertising and based on the keywords you're competing at the moment in time, Google is starting to give you your ranking in paid advertising. So you can't just go and say, by the way, I'm BMW, I can just pay as much as you like, put me on the top spot. They're saying, no, you can't do it. Right? So even its own paid advertising platform is quite clever, because it'll calculate based on your past performance and based on your relevant ad that you are presenting. And if your ads are relevant, right, and if also your past performance is quite good, Google is going to start showing up your ad higher in the ranking. Search engine optimization, the black hat, obviously the bad side of things, and how people try to play the system off. And it's no good because Google checks regularly, and if they can pick up that you try to cheat the system, they're very, very tough on it. In fact, excuse me, I think it was a few years ago when an agency did a bit of black hat for BMW, alright? And we're not sure whether BMW was aware of it, but it did a bit of black hat SEO, so it made some of the things quite popular, so it cheated Google's system, and Google blackmailed BMW, right? And then, of course, after long discussions and probably pretty good pays, and from BMW, they went back in the system. But again, even for the largest players, Google was very, very tough on them, and they have pretty much blacklisted those guys, right? But they went back in. And the white hat is the hard work, right? The white hat SEO normally that you'll find in the reading material is the hard work SEO that we talked about so far. Organic search optimization reflects on some of the following, including the content, headings that reflect on the content that's being searched for, listing, tags, all attributes, which means that you are telling the browser through an HTML tag that what users are going to see is going to be an image, and the name of the image is this one. That goes same with the website structure, menu links, file names, pages, and so on and so forth. And then external links that link to your website, which are also quite important. Now again, all of those are behind Google algorithm, which is top secret, and obviously nobody knows the details on how that works, because that's where Google makes its money. And if you wonder, just quickly, before we get to the end, how Google gives you back the results so quickly. Well, that's because Google builds data centers around the world, which means that if I search for something here in the UK, the search inquiry is not going to go to the data center in the US and then come back to me with some results, but it's going to find the closest data center to me, which is probably in Ireland, right? And then it's going to get back to me with the search results. Which means that speed is everything. So in other words, Google optimizes itself before it helps others optimize themselves for Google. Right? And there are several tools. So there are several tools to help you with SEO. And I'll put some of those in there. But again, you can find there are hundreds of tools out there that check on your work on your website and how successful that one is using SEO. So you don't have to do it manually, but you've got to do the manual work in going behind the scene and changing some of those tags we talked about earlier.